Welcome to Coder to Developer, a free Tekpub production. And in this series, I'm going to focus on a remake of Mike Gunderloy's classic, Coder to Developer. The goal of the screencast is to offer you tools and perspectives so you can advance your career from, let's say, a beginning or mid-level coder to a full-fledged developer, someone with a higher salary potential, perhaps, or maybe you have managerial aspirations or you want to go out on your own. Well, that's what this screencast is all about, taking your skills to the next level. Well, let's start with the book. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Coder to Developer. It was written about 6 or 7 years ago by Mike Gunderloy, and I read this on a plane coming back from my parents' house once. I was with my wife and my kids, and my daughter was sleeping on my lap, and I remember just kind of paging through this and just being glued to it. Now, I will tell you that the concepts that I'm going to be presenting are probably not earth-shattering to you. In fact, you'll probably be looking at them and go, yeah, I know about that, or I know about that, or whatever. But hopefully, what I can get across in this screencast is the same thing that Mike got across to me in this book, is the ability of synthesizing it all together. It's making you sort of see, well, this is what you're going to need to focus on if you're going to advance your career. And so with that, let's talk about you. Maybe this is you. You just got out of school. You've got that computer science degree in your hand. You know a lot about code. You know a good amount about writing an application. You don't know much about the business world. You also don't know too much about navigating projects and project processes and all the things that go into working in the industry. Well, you're going to want to watch this screencast. Maybe this is you. You're a self-taught code jock hacker guy. This is how I got introduced to the world of programming. Maybe someone handed you a book on whatever technology and said, learn this, learn how to macro this thing, learn how to write this database, learn how to program Excel, learn how to write this website. It is you. Maybe you started out doing HTML design and you backed your way into coding. And well, now you're at the point where, hey, you could either take this industry seriously and make a little bit more money or whatever, or you could just kind of continue what you're doing. Well, if you're the kind of person who wants to take this stuff more seriously, this screencast is for you. Or maybe this is you. Maybe you're just born with supernatural abilities. You just kind of grew up. You're one of those kids that hacked into the IRS database when you were 10, and now you kind of want to make some money at it instead of being evil all the time. Or maybe not evil, maybe just mischievous. Now you got to get to a point where you got to work the industry a little bit. You kind of have to work processes. You kind of have to go beyond the code. Well, this screencast is for you. Or maybe you're a mix of all three, as most of us are. And you probably do have some raw natural ability. You probably do also have some classical training. And, you're probably also backing your way into a job in technology. Either way, if you find yourself at all or part of one of those descriptions, well, this is your screencast. First off, I have the assumption that you already know how to write code, and you can assemble code together into useful algorithms, perhaps even an application. I've also assumed that you want to take your skills to the next level. You're on a journey. This is your career. And you want to start walking down this path. Now, we understand those two things. Well, let's move on. Let's dive deeper into your brain. How do you think? How do you conceive of ideas? Do you have any prejudices? When you could think of technology and someone asks you a question or maybe shows you some code, how do you react? A lot of times, beginning developers have a knee-jerk reaction when they see something that's complicated. They look at it and they say, that's crap. A lot of times that is from a defensive standpoint, where they might not understand what it is they're looking at. They might not understand all the concepts that go into it, might dub it overly complex or complicated, and call it crap. I did that. I did it a lot. And I remember when I got over it. It took a lot for me to get over it, because I thought I knew a lot at the time. I thought I knew a lot about what it was I was doing. Well, I didn't. And it only took a lot of effort and discipline and beating over the head of my manager to get me to stop doing this. Well, maybe you're also the other kind of developer who's more mellow. Well, I don't know, whatever you think, man. You're the genius, you're the smart guy, you're my manager, you're the solutions dude, you're the architect. Just tell me what you think I should do. I'll go do it. Yeah, whatever that guy says. There's a lot of people out there like that too, and yes, I started out that way. I'd find an idea or a person, and I just jump on it. Okay, what's what they think, it's what they say. Or maybe you have a bit of a prejudice. A lot of people do. Maybe you're one of the Linux types that really just can't stand Microsoft because other people told you that Microsoft is evil. Maybe it's the other way around, where you're a Microsoft guy and, well, anything open source is undocumented, sloppy garbage. These things are prejudices, and what they do is they put you in a position of working politics and theory and philosophy. Instead of actual technology and self-growth, you have to debate things that, well, you're not equipped to debate. You have to make knee-jerk assumptions, and it puts you in a place of, well, looking foolish. Now, it's good to have a voice. It's good to have an opinion. It's better to know what you're talking about, because when you don't know what you're talking about and you have prejudices, well, you come across as a bit of a fool. These things are anchors. They blind you. These things slow you down. So that's where I want to start. I want to start with what's in your brain. And I want you to face yourself and realize that a lot of times advancement in your career or in your industry has more to do with you than anything else. Okay, so let's summarize this into the famous 3 things. The first thing you're going to need is an open mind. Can't stress that enough. Next thing you're going to need is a dedication to learning. Now, maybe you already have these things or you think you do. These 2 things go hand in hand. And what these 2 things mean are that when you're challenged with a differing opinion, challenged with something you're not comfortable with, even challenged with something that you're fairly positive you thought through before and you've realized, I don't like it. Well, think again. You should always have an open mind, especially when revisiting old ideas that you thought were dumb previously. Next up, if you have a dedication to learning with an open mind, you will advance 2 to 3 times as fast as everybody else in the industry. But in all those fads and shiny things lie goodness. So those 2 things are critical. Finally, major thing that you need to have is patience. I can't underscore this enough. All these three things lean on each other in a nice, great pyramid. Open mind, dedication to learning, and patience. Okay, easily said. I'm not in a pulpit here. The goal of this screencast is not for me to sit here and preach. The goal is to show you some tricks, and I'm going to do that. I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm not just going to tell you to have an open mind and not tell you how to do it. So let's jump into that real quick. You have to realize that this is a long, long journey we're on. And there is going to be a lot of code that you are going to see over your career. Things will change dramatically, as you probably have already seen in the little time that you've spent in this industry. There are no hard and fast beliefs. There really is only coping and sort of keeping up with and understanding that things do change and keeping a level and steady head. As I mentioned, this is a long, long journey you're on. You're going to have to get used to change. And to get used to change, your mind has to be open and welcoming of it. New stuff. Learning new stuff, learning old stuff, learning different stuff. If you pick just one thing, you're closing your mind. If you have a dedication to learning, well, hey, go learn Rails. Go learn Django. If you're a Rails and Django person, go learn Microsoft's framework. You might have a knee-jerk reaction right now that says, oh my goodness, why would I ever want to learn Java? Linux, give me a break. That stuff is XYZ. Well, if you've just said that to yourself, understand this. You have prejudices, and those prejudices are going to keep you from advancing. So, my recommendation, start small. Maybe install Rails, get a Rails app going if you're a Microsoft developer. Or install Django. See how fun that is. Or, you know what I did the other day? Literally, I went and downloaded Ubuntu and I installed a Linux box just to make sure I could still do it. Because when you have conversations with people that do these things, what's going to be impressive to them and give you a lot of credibility is if you understand what it is you're talking about. You might not like Rails. A lot of people don't. If you don't like Rails, it would be good to give a reason why that is educated rather than, oh, that's just XYZ. And the same with Linux. And, vice versa. If you're a Linux Rails person and you say, I don't like Microsoft stuff because Microsoft's evil, that sounds ridiculous. So what I'm suggesting here is you take it upon yourself to learn these things just for fun. Next up, along the learning lines, are blogs. And a lot of people don't really read blogs. They just don't have time in the day. They maybe got a lot of work to do, and that's okay. I don't want to draw a line in the sand and say, oh, you got to read a blog in order to be a developer. I'm just telling you this is one way that you can learn. You don't have to. I know a lot of people that don't, but they maintain a very healthy career. Just reading other people's thoughts and ideas, expanding your mind. Blogs are a great way, an easy way, probably the most time-efficient way of doing it. And it all starts with picking a blog reader and go out and grab something like Google Reader. This is my reader. These are the blogs I read. I don't read too many. I know a lot of people that have 50 or so feeds that they read. That's what each one of those little things is called in there. It's an RSS feed, or a really simple syndication feed, that you can pull in news from blogs all over the place and you can read it in one place. And it saves it for you. It's super handy. So I use Google Reader, and I read about, well, as you can see, 25, 30 blogs, and I do it every morning. I wake up and grab my coffee, come and sit down at my desk, and I spend about a half hour reading through just to know what's going on out there. Now, there's a bunch of blogs that I would highly recommend reading, and I got them right here for you in no particular order. If you're a Microsoft person, I always recommend Quoting Horror first. Jeff and I poke fun at each other. Well, I poke fun at him more than he pokes fun at me. Probably by an exponential order. But anyway, he's always a good read. He's an outstanding writer, thoroughly investigates his stuff. Another person is, of course, Scott Hanselman and Scott Guthrie. Those two guys are leading figures at Microsoft and leading figures in the Microsoft technical industry. There's Phil Hack, same thing, works at Microsoft as well, is the PM for ASP.NET MVC. And then there's Daryl Basanjo, who's always a good read. He is also working at Microsoft. And he is probably, other than Scott Hanselman, probably the most widely read Microsoft blogger. All right, those are individual folks. Well, and there's me. A lot of people would say, why you didn't include yourself in that list? I wouldn't put myself in that crowd, but I do have a decent following on my blog as well. Next up are the industrial blog feeds. There is TechCrunch. I like reading TechCrunch. It just kind of lets me know what's happening in the industry. Download Squad, there's occasionally fun little things, tools and stuff that I can be aware of by going to Download Squad. .NET Kicks is a great site. It's an aggregator. Pulls in news and information from blog posts that people like. Same with Reddit. That's a little bit more industry expansive. It doesn't just focus on Microsoft stuff as the other ones do. Reddit is a little bit more widely read and used. And finally, gotta have some fun in your reader. There's a comic strip called XKCD that is just awesome. Well, all I can say about it. It deals with math and computer science, and the guy's insanely fun. So to summarize this part, I would urge you to start reading blogs if you don't. I would say that is probably one of the major things that helped my career, just to know what people are thinking and doing, kind of the pulse of the industry, if you will, kind of brought me up to speed on a lot of concepts too. Get yourself a blog. Start up at WordPress.com. It's free. Create your own blog, choose the theme, you're off and running. And one of the things that I really push you to do is to use it as a learning tool for yourself, almost like a journal. This is what I did when I first started. I created a blog, and if I was learning a new concept, I remember one of the first concepts I learned was the, provider model, I think, way back when. And I remember writing blog posts on it and saying, well, okay, here's how you set up a singleton. This is how you set up a blah, 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 blah. And I'd write some code down, and I basically used it as a journal/code library for myself. And that just slowly started to grow. And I realized that if I started writing things for future reference, I better be detailed because I forget things a lot. And then next thing you know, people start finding my blog and reading it, saying, hey, thanks, you really helped me here. And then my blog just grew from there. So if you do take the time to write some blog posts, make sure they're detailed and investigated. Try and stay away from the rants. A little bit of advice from me to you is that whatever you write on your blog will be read by future employers, probably current employers as well. So keep it on the up and up, keep it professional. You never know what people are going to dig out of your blog 6 or 7 years from now. The first thing that I learned to master, or to try and master at least, is the concept of the walk. When I felt myself getting frustrated, cranky, upset, wound out, couldn't handle anymore, I would stop what I was doing and go for a walk. Stopping what you're doing is insanely important, because when you get to that point where maybe you're frustrated with the conversation, with your work, and someone sends you an email that's going to require a little bit of patience on your part and you don't have it, well, you're going to feel really dumb about it if you come off with a knee-jerk reaction. You don't want to be the person who's tolerated in your office. You want to be the person who's patient and, well, is rock solid. I'm sure you've heard that about other people in your office where they have said, oh, yeah, Joe Blow over there, he's nails. That guy's ice. You can't shake him. Having a trait like that is worth its weight in gold. So you want to learn to cultivate it. First way to cultivate it is by being able to stop yourself when you know you're getting cranky. And maybe treat yourself to a mind emptying thing like a walk. Next up is having lunch with friends. This is sort of an inadvertent walk, if you will, but if you schedule this on a daily basis where you get a group of friends together and you go for lunch, or maybe just one friend or two friends, or your wife or your spouse, your husband, whatever, and you just make a point to meet them, not talk about work, talk about other stuff, well, that can only serve you. Emptying your brain is huge. And you know what I do? What I do is I try and take 2 hours for lunch. I go to work early. I start around 7:30 every morning, and I end around 5. That affords me an extra hour and a half or hour for lunch. So I usually take 2 to 2.5 hour lunch break in the middle of the day. And what I'll do is I'll go maybe have like a smoothie or some sort of snack, and then I'll go for a long walk, or I'll get on the water. Maybe I'll go for a run or a bike ride, or go to the gym, and then I'll go eat a nice long lunch. By the time I get back to work, I am ready to go. It literally feels like a brand new day. There is no underestimating how important that little tip is. Now, I'm sure you've heard this before, but I'll remind you again that half of this series is about discipline and making sure you take yourself and your career seriously. You need to cultivate this habit. If you've heard it before, you know it's out there and you never do it, well, do it. Well, finally is getting a hobby. Getting out of the office, getting away, preferably with a group of friends, but doing something completely different. One thing I really like to do is martial arts. I mean, there's a lot you learn. Physically fit, you learn to calm yourself down, you learn discipline, meditation, you learn how to defend yourself, which is huge. Now, I do Kung Fu. I used to do Japanese forms of karate. I used to do Shotokan. And finally, if you still don't have a hobby, but you're looking for one, I find that the ultimate geek hobby is brewing beer. Now, I like beer, and it's not a mystery to anybody who knows me that I enjoy a good glass of beer. And I think part of the reason is because I like to brew. And the reason I like to brew is because I'm a geek. There is so much process and chemistry and tinkering that go into home brewing. It's like the perfect geek thing. And when you're done, look what you get to have. You get to have a glass of beer and talk about making friends. And if you had a problem having friends to go out with during the lunch break, well, this will solve it for you real quick. But homebrewing is a really fun thing to do as well. All right. So if you're wondering if this whole series is going to be me lecturing, no, it's not. I'm going to be showing you some tips and tricks and all kinds of good stuff, practices, things you should know, software patterns, and all that other stuff. In fact, let's just show you what we're going to do. I'm going to run you through project inception. Well, what do you do when you start a project? What is an elevator pitch? What the heck does that mean? I'm also going to show you things like, well, what's our project process? How do I go through deciding it? How do I manage a client? What do we do to tracking bugs? What software should we use to communicate, and so on? Next up, organization. Architectural principles. I'm going to go through a review of software patterns and when to use and when not to. Starting small and growing your application. Talk about principles like SRP and Law of Demeter, future-proofing with interfaces. Talk a little bit about Microsoft and its role in all of this, Microsoft P&P, project scheduling, waterfall, blah, blah, blah. Next up, a concept I call big picture coding. Maybe changes in style to what you do now. In other words, what is defensive coding? What does that mean? Using assertions and exceptions effectively. Properly commenting your code, which means not only do it, but don't do it too much. And how do you do an effective comment? What about to-do and hack tags? How do those factor in? Code analysis tools. How do you effectively analyze your code? What about Reflector? Perhaps using open source. Buy versus build. Not invented here. I'm going to tackle all that and big picture coding. Unit testing. That'll be a barn burner. We're going to talk about effective testing of your code. When to TDD, when not to TDD. BDD. We'll talk about testing in general. How to do it, how not to do it, when to do it. Next up, we'll talk about bugs. What's bug triage? We'll talk about logging and how to effectively log your application, why it's important, why you're not doing it now. Talk about client as partner and client as friend. And finally, we'll talk about running a team. And that's huge because as you grow as a developer, the minute you start exhibiting the ability to lead others, that is when your career is going to take off. The ability to lead others stems from good communication. Good communication stems from your ability to have an open mind and discipline. But I do want to say this is going to be a very fun series. I am really looking forward to it. The entire thing is going to be free. If you do have any questions, please do let me know. My email is rob@tekpub.com. I will listen to your advice, answer your questions, and I look forward to this. Thanks for watching.